Hello. In this chapter I want to show the small difference between Unreal 4 and 5. So if you started this tutorial on Unreal 4 but you were watching the previous videos in Unreal 5, you probably noticed that it was very easy to find where things are because they changed it very little. The UI is a little different, but it's pretty much the same. But the biggest difference is how you treat the lighting, because in Unreal 5 the standard lighting is a lumen, and lumen does all the lighting calculations in real time. So you really don't have to worry about reflections and about baking the lighting, but in Unreal 4 you do. So the tutorial Spanish Town, the environment Spanish Town, was made in Unreal 4 before Lumen was available. So for that environment to look good, I had to use static lighting. And I'm gonna show you in this video how to do that. So first, I'm just gonna build a quick scene here. So no different than Unreal 5, right? So I'm just gonna pause the video and build a simple room here. Okay, so I built this simple area, and you might notice that the lighting looks very boring, looks very flat. We only get this just the main shadows, but we don't have any ambient occlusion. The lighting just looks very boring, and when you get close to a metallic material, for example, if you drag and drop the windows, those use metallic materials, you're going to notice that they look black. And none of this happens in Unreal 5 because it handles all this stuff automatically with a lumen if you have lumen available. But in Unreal 4 and also Unreal 5, if you disable lumen and you use baked lighting, the workflow is a little different. So after you build, you need to bake the lighting, and to do that you need to make sure that the map's set up for that. So out of the box, the map is set up for baking, but let's just double check that the lightings are correct. So you need to make sure that your light source, which is the sun light, the directional light, is set to stationary or static, but stationary is the recommended one, because with the stationary, it means that once you bake lighting, it's gonna keep the dynamic shadows, the sharp shadows, but it's also going to bake the static lighting. If you put it only to static and then you bake, you're not gonna have the dynamic shadow. The shadow is just gonna look lower resolution, and this will become very apparent if you have trees, for example. The shadows will be very blobby. So I recommend to keep on stationary. And if you put to movable and then you bake the lighting, and then you're not gonna get the effect that you're looking for, because then this light will be fully dynamic. And if you are working on a big environment with like lots of terrain and trees and organics and day and night cycle, you're not gonna bake the lighting, so you're gonna have to go the movable way. But in the fully dynamic lighting in Unreal 4, this is what you get. You know, you can tweak the ambient occlusion and some things, the real-time ambient occlusion, but the lighting will be very simple. So to make this long story short, if you're going to bake lighting, if you're not going to use lumen, you have to bake lighting. And to do that, make sure the directional light is set to stationary. Make sure that you have a skylight. So these are all here. You know what? I'm gonna delete all of this. I'm gonna start from scratch, so you can see better how it works. So let's say I started from scratch and I don't have anything. Like what's the bare minimum that I need to have lighting? So the first thing is, let's look for a sky, and then you can use the BP sky sphere. So this is the procedural skybox, which the colors and the lighting stuff, they will change once we have a directional light, which we don't have yet. So let's drop directional light. So we drop the directional light, and stationary, like we don't need to change the values for now. They're good enough. You can change the angle if you want. So we need a skybox, directional light, and now we need skylight. This one here, skylight. And this one you also set to stationary. So the skylight, what it does is, once you bake the lighting, it's going to bake a reflection probe based on the skylight, and then it's going to reflect that into the ambient. So basically it's going to make the ambient light affect your shadows. So you always want to have this. Like if you don't have a skylight, your lighting is going to look very flat. And now before we bake, let's go to the skylight here, and here you can choose your directional light, and now your skybox knows where the skylight is. And if you change this, it should change the sky too. You just have to click on the refresh material. So if you see, like if I change the angle here of the directional light, and then I refresh the skybox, it changes accordingly. So if you have a very low angle, like sunset, you get this. So this is a pretty cool feature, very easy to set up lighting. Especially when you're blocking out, you shouldn't go further than this. Like you shouldn't set up the lighting more than this when you're just blocking out. The standard values are more than enough. So now we can bake. So let's hit on build lighting, and let's do a preview bake first. So now it's gonna bake the lighting, and then bam. So this is on preview mode, and the lighting will be very low resolution, but this is great for blockouts. But that still didn't fix the problem of the metallic. Like at least now they have the skylight to reflect, but they're still not reflecting this area unless you look at an angle. When you look at an angle, there is a effect called screen space reflections. So this is view dependent, you know, like it only works when you see things at a glance, but when you look them head on, you need a reflection probes for this. And in Unreal 5 with Lumen, you don't need to worry about reflection probes, but in Unreal 4 you do need to place reflection probes. So very simple. Let's just drop a box reflection here, and make sure that it covers this whole area. And now we get the reflections. And because we changed it, so like the reflection got baked when we dropped it, right? So now we have to refresh this, and to do that it's a build reflection probes, and now it refreshes all the probes. So this is a cube map. It's a static texture that it just took a 360 picture of the environment, and then it reflects whatever is inside this volume is going to reflect that. But when we go inside here, Look how weird it looks, right? It's still reflecting the outside. So in this case, we need to place another probe in there. So let's duplicate and then place a small one here. And this is something that I'm gonna explain in more depth later, but I just wanna make sure you understand this before we move. So we place it in that area, and now when we bake, now we got a much better reflection. So remember that the probes, they affect whatever is in that area, right? So you can see a little artifact here, and there is no way to get rid of this. When you have reflection probes, you're always gonna have this kind of problems, and you can see in a lot of games. If you play a lot, if you notice this in games, that's the effect. So, oops, I hit build, so it's gonna rebuild the whole lighting. So once you want to see how this looks like at a better quality, you can increase the lighting here, the lighting quality. So let's try a bake with high quality. So this is the bake with high quality. It looks a little better. You can see that here the light's leaking, and that's because this is one piece, right? If I build it like this, and then I'm gonna create seams there, and those are gonna look more correct. So you see, the problem with baked lighting is after it's baked and you move stuff, it doesn't update in real time, right? So you always need to build again. And yeah, let me just bake so you can see this. So now this looks correct because those pieces are separated. So before we go, I'll show you where the global lighting settings are, and they are in world settings. And there is one here. I'll show you. This one you want to enable, use ambient occlusion, but the other stuff you really don't need to change. And lastly, it gets very annoying, right? Like when you're working and then some stuff is baked, some stuff is not. So for example, if I move this piece, you know, like the lighting is still there. So to delete the baked lighting, you can click on force, no pre-computed lighting, hit OK, and then you hit build, and that's gonna delete all the baked lighting, and now you go back to that mode that we were before. And then you can just disable this and build to get the baked lighting. So now I'm gonna let it do it here so you see the difference of the lighting after you bake. So this is before baking, and then you bake, and it's gonna have some time to import the light maps, and there you go. So that looks much better. So just keep this in mind. If you're working in Unreal 4, you always want to be baking to make sure you see things correctly. And in the next video, I'm gonna show you how to install the GPU Light Baker, and I really recommend that for baking lighting because it just bakes much faster than the standard Unreal Baker, and I think it gives much better results. So I hope that with this video you shouldn't have any questions anymore about like how to bake lighting and when to bake lighting. But just to make it very clear, if you have Unreal 5 and your computer can handle Lumen, you should totally go for that. You're gonna want to use baked lighting when you need high performance. So for example, for VR, you really have to bake lighting. There is no chance you can get away with dynamic lighting. And And for your portfolio piece, if you are working on Unreal 4, I think you just have to bake Lighting to get this kind of fidelity, you know, to get all these gradients and all this stuff. It's impossible to get with a dynamic lighting. So hope that was clear, and see you in the next video.